Thank you for coming. That's better. So, I'll just dive straight into it because I probably have 10 minutes more than I'd like to show you than actually time I have. Keep the introduction short. I'm André. I'm one of the organizers, for instance, of Your Dreaming, which is French Touch Dreaming, but in Belgium or Netherlands. And also a user group leader together with Justina, who I just saw here. But when you see her, just give her a hug. And yeah, I've been in the ecosystem for the last 9 years. And now as a freelance consultant, user adoption and data quality is, those are my two main topics that people, my customers say, he's the annoying guy who can talk about that. Now, there's 4 sections. So first, why does all this matter? There's a 6-step framework you can use to address your user adoption issues. There's a data quality framework. And then, of course, what can you do after this session yourself? We'll start, of course, with why does this actually matter? Now, if you have a look, in the title it says the Holy Grail, because user adoption is not just something that's standing by itself. I see it as part of change management, and in change management, user adoption is one of the goals. User adoption is just something that's really difficult to get to that goal. Now, when you answer this, when you raise your hand, please keep in mind the difference between what it should be and what you think it should be, or what you've actually seen in reality. So, for instance, what I've noticed quite often is, end of the project, there's a stage in the project plan that says, on this side, that's where we start with user adoption. So, raise hands. Anyone that sounds familiar to? Right, or maybe here in the hypercare section of your implementation, quite often it's planned there, but of course it should happen here. Now, realistically, who has actually seen that happen, where during the design stage there was talk about user adoption? All right.
Talk about, but that's different to doing anything, right?
Yes, that is indeed, big difference talking about it and doing it. But I have to be honest, when there's talk about user adoption during the design stage, I think you're already further ahead than half of the project I've been involved with. Not sure if that's my problem or my customer's problem. But what you see here is, of course, it's a big mess. And say your Salesforce environment looks like this, and for today you're in the role of internal administrator or implementation consultant for your customer. If you build this, or if you find this, and this is what your Salesforce looks like, and it could be the data that's just a mess like this, you're not going to be able to find it, find anything. Or if it's the technical side of things, the page layout, all that kind of stuff that looks like this, again, no one's going to be happy with that. But especially if you have a look at the data, when it looks like that, your reports, they might look shiny, but what you probably notice is they're just wrong. Like the results of your reports and dashboards, you can't trust them because your data is bad, and of course, when there's no trust, that's not going to happen. So, hi. So, a few things. If you can't read it, or if it shows blurry, of course, recording will be posted, but also, reach out to me and I'll send you the slides. So there's three groups, like tooling, processes, and the behavior, and that's what I see as the 3 groups that usually need attention when it comes to user adoption. Now, a few things you see here, for instance, at the top, Salesforce is the root of all evil. I've heard different versions of that many times. And what it usually means is that someone's not happy with the implementation and they blame Salesforce for it. I mean, yeah, long story. But of course, also process, quite often, during an implementation, there's a process, maybe a new process or redesigned, and when that's done, that's when a tooling like Salesforce actually gets adjusted as well to match that process. But quite often, when you mention the word process, people start running away and it's like, oh no, too difficult, I'm more operational, functional, I don't want to have anything to do with process. And then there's behavior. The system can be cool, the data can be all up to date, integrations work really well, but if, and I've seen this with especially account managers, salespeople, when they have to log in and every single day log everything and they don't even know why, all the customer, can't find the English word, all the customer interactions, if they have to log that, they don't see, they see that as administrative overhead. So, show them, why that's valuable. But we'll get to that later. So now you know a bit why. Then we're going to have a look at what are we going to do about it. So 3 problem areas means 6 solution areas. Again, they'll look familiar, so there's a bit of process, of course there's technology, so Salesforce, there's tooling and everything around it. There's knowledge, because you can have a nice system if you don't tell anyone how it works. There's also no point. Communication, that's really important, I'll get to that in a second. Then of course the behavior. What does everyone do? And responsibilities. Especially the last one, I want to spend a bit more time on that, because that's something you hardly ever see in a lot of implementations. Just go through all 6 of them quickly with a few examples. So, process. Make sure there's a business case. That sounds like, of course there's a business case, or else there will be no investment for the Salesforce upgrade or total complete implementation. If there isn't one, make sure there is one, and make sure that during and especially after the implementation, you have a look at the business case. Why do we do this again? And and also keep updating that also with the process. If you think of a nice new process beforehand, who knows what it's going to look like 6 months later when you finish your implementation. Then with the technology, of course, it's not always only Salesforce. 9 out of 10 times Salesforce talks or is integrated with other systems, like for instance, I won't say any names, but old-fashioned ERP systems. And so have a look, for instance, at a group of tools. For instance, you can have something like MailChimp. One of my customers, they use MailChimp, and every week they email a selection of their customers. They really use Salesforce only as like a pretty much mail merge functionality. It's a database of addresses. They blame Salesforce for a lot of things, but 9 out of 10 times it's actually the combination of the two. Now, for the knowledge, so what you have, and I hope that this sounds familiar to a lot of people. So you have the the early adopters, the gray middle, and the late adopters. So this is all your users. Some early adopters, they really see the value. They help you. Maybe they even like key users or like subject matter experts that help you create the tool, help you with the implementation. Then there's everyone else who just kind of uses it. They don't hate it, they don't love it, they just do the work. And of course then there's the late adopters. Please give them some attention, because they can give you very, very valuable feedback before, during and after the implementations. And of course, like with the other things, the business case and the processes, if your training material gets created at some point during the implementation, it will be outdated by the time you publish it. So make sure that's also updated. So we're halfway through. See, I think we're right in the middle of the time as well. Communication, summary of this, internal marketing. Make sure that what you do, for instance, small releases, be like Salesforce in that sense. So Salesforce has 3 releases a year, and of course there's this whole big marketing circus around it. Try and do the same within your company or team, even if it's just you and 2 other users. Try and celebrate it. Give this happy spin to it. And your early adopters, try and make them champions, for instance. Help them, let them be an extension of your team. And out of this one, I only want to say, reward good behavior. So what you see quite often is bad behavior gets punished. And that could, for instance, be in the shape of having validation rule number 200 on one object. Your users are going to hate that, but why you think it's a good idea is because there's a few users that always skip filling out 1 or 2 fields. Please don't punish the rest of the company for them doing that, but reward the good behavior. Now, this one, the responsibilities. If you're building your Salesforce environment, if you're building it for the functional, operational level, make sure that all the data they put in, because that's quite often what happens, they enter a lot of data that then gets used by management. If they don't even log in to have a look at the data and the reports and everything, then what use is the whole exercise? And again, no matter how small it is, think of the responsibilities a change manager or adoption manager has. And again, it can be only one person doing all these things, but if you Google for this, like what does a center of excellence do, and what does a change manager do? Try and take those things into your daily work. Try and include that. And again, these are the 6. Now, for, I would almost say the boring part, data quality. Because of course, all the tools and everything and the processes, that's all nice, but if everything looks well, works well, and your data is not, is a mess, what point is, what's the point of having a good, shiny Salesforce environment? And of course, that's the case. Now, this might look scary because these are 12 building blocks of what I call, the information strategy. Each building block, I can probably give a presentation of like 4 days on each single one of these. If you're thinking, where do I start? I'd say start with these 4. So that's data quality. When you have good quality data, of course, then you can adjust your KPIs, at a strategic level or operational level. What are the KPIs? What are we trying to reach? And this grabs back to your business case. Assuming Salesforce integrates with other systems, make sure you think about master data management. Which system is the master of for instance, your account data, your addresses? What's the master there? And of course, you can't just keep piling data into Salesforce 9 out of 10 times. Think about archiving as well. Get rid of some data. Now, this, I'd say, let's talk about this whole thing for 2 minutes, and then I can talk about it for another hour. But what you do is have a look at your data and profile. Like you start at the top of this model. How good or how bad is it? And good example or easy example: account data and who's my customer, where's their office. If, for instance, the country field is not filled, or it's badly filled, or the addresses are a mess, then you can group those. These are all good, these are all bad, then you focus on the bad stuff. Yeah, you focus on that, and if there's anything missing, any duplicates, then you start cleansing your data. Then, of course, you start standardizing. For instance, per country, there's a standard set of rules on what addresses look like. Make sure they follow those rules. Then, of course, there's probably going to be duplicates after you've done all this. You maybe even created duplicates in the process. Get rid of those. Once you're done with that one bad group of data, you start monitoring again. Did this actually fix the problem? Most likely not, because this is a process, never-ending process. You will have to keep doing this. I'm sorry for that news, but yeah, it's just something you have to keep doing and doing and doing. It gets easier, because probably the first few times you do it, it's difficult. After that, the bad group of data gets smaller and smaller. Now, last 5 minutes. 4. What can you do about this? Again, a lot of text, but main takeaway. So, and this is again, based on the tooling, the process, and behavior. Easy documentation and training ready, and with documentation, that could also be a help text on the field. It doesn't have to be lengthy, PowerPoint or Word documents. Do the tools actually support the process and the goals? So these are all things, all questions that we've touched on before, but these are the questions to create a baseline, pretty much. How good or bad is my user adoption? Keep asking these questions, and then keep track of the answers, and hopefully you'll see progress over time. So the progress, of course, just like with new process in Salesforce, how do you track that? How do you set the goals? So with the KPIs, your indicators of how successful you are, you can have a look from a process perspective or from a business perspective. Hopefully, touch on both. Who does what in Salesforce, for instance? And that's not necessarily the same as a profile or a role in Salesforce, but who does what and how can you measure that? And then also from a business perspective, so it's not all technical. This model will probably help you with actually translating, your goals. For instance, if you talk to any Salesforce account executive, probably in the first 2 minutes they've talked about 360 customer view. And what does that mean? Of course, this is value for your customer, but also growing your business. So those are two different buckets of your goal that you can then translate into the values. For instance, I think. But you see there, the second one, improve customer relationship, or also increase cross and upsell. And those you can then translate into the actual KPIs. These are very simple, very easy examples, but it's a good start. Because if you start with these basic, easy to understand for all the levels of management and users, you at least have a start. A few examples. And I think that the top one might actually be one of the more important ones. What's the percentage of users actually logging into Salesforce? Because if you then create reports and you have goals within Salesforce that you monitor within Salesforce, that's nice, but that's only going to report on the people that have already logged in. If the majority of the people don't log in, go and have a look at other systems, or maybe just sit next to them, or make someone else sit next to them and say, okay, show me what you do every day while you're not logging into Salesforce. You can't get that out of a report. And of course, keep this in mind. Happy customers, that's why we do it. And as a consultant, it could be your customer or their customers. And of course, last one I didn't touch on, find the trends. again, it's an iterative process. Keep doing it, and if you keep logging all the progress you have, you're probably going to see a trend. Hopefully, it will go up when it comes to user adoption. Second last slide. Don't do it all yourself. Doesn't matter how big or small your company or team is, or how old your team is, or Salesforce. It's always a team effort. Now, is user adoption the holy grail of change management? I think it is, because everything I just said before. But also, yeah, keep in mind, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Because this, is a very quick, very, pretty much generic framework of what you can do, adapted to your needs and problems and challenges, and then you can make user adoption your holy grail. Now, that is the end. These are my contact details, because there's probably a lot of questions we cannot answer right now. Are there any questions?
Do you think that some systems that aren't as proactive in the ability to keep evolving and keep changing the Salesforce makes it difficult for some customers to understand that there is so much more that's possible with Salesforce? It is something that needs to be managed.
Yes. So if I understand the question correct, like when it comes to user adoption, other systems are not as flexible as Salesforce, and that can really stop the user adoption.
Completely. I work in predominantly hospitality, so a lot of the other systems are very transactional. So a lot of the senior team trying to get their buy-in that Salesforce requires change management, it requires support, is something that they struggle with.
Yeah, that is definitely something to keep in mind, and I think that's where the sort of what I mentioned before, like don't only have a look at the tool, but have a look at a group of tools that fit within a certain process or team, and yeah, that changes the approach. And I've seen it, with integrations with other really old non-flexible systems. Especially when it integrates with Salesforce, sometimes that means you cannot use certain basic functionalities that are really awesome in Salesforce. It is...
Like duplicate management.
Yes, like duplicate management, exactly. And I think what helps when it comes to user adoption is to make everyone aware, not point a finger at anything like, oh no, we at Salesforce, like our team, we're good, it's there that causes a problem. But yeah, find a way to make that visible, but then hopefully you can help the other team, other system. And I think that was it. Thank you so much. I'll be around here for the next few hours, and thank you.